When Sim Settlements 2 launched on the Nexus Mod website back in October of 2020, it quickly exploded in popularity, offering both a compelling story as well as a massive improvement on the pre-existing settlement building system that unmodded Fallout 4 offered to the players. Following up on the success as well as the cliffhanger ending that the story left off on, the adventures of Jake and his miracle settlement building technology, ASAMs, continued in Sim Settlements 2 Chapter 2. All of the footage used to make this video was taken from my live streams on twitch.tv/followertoshi. Make sure to stop by and give me a follow to be part of the live show. If you missed any of my live streams, or just want to watch them again, you can find all of my old streams in my live streams playlist. Just so you are aware, because it's not apparent to some, the review process involves talking about the main story, which will obviously include spoilers. If you don't want to hear my detailed retelling of the main story, jump to this point in the video to hear my positives, negatives, and final thoughts on Sim Settlements 2 Chapter 2. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, and let's jump right into the review. Starting off exactly where Chapter 1 left us, we find Jake's workshop in Concord completely trashed following what seems to be an attack, with gunner hunter Aiden observing the scene. After speaking with Aiden and investigating the scene for yourself, you discover that while working, Jake was assaulted by gunner forces led by a man named Berman, tasked with capturing Jake and retrieving the comm hub by order of a gunner captain known as Algernon. A note you find at the scene suggests the gunners learned about Jake's location from the Ron, an information broker in Diamond City. A theory that turns out to be all too real, as we find Ron still reeling from the gunner's enhanced interrogation tactics once we arrive at his office. Luckily for us, Ron was able to remember enough about his encounter with the gunners to learn that the group that assaulted him came from a vault located in the ruins of the Malden Middle School. Aiden, who was listening to this conversation outside, theorizes that Jake may have been taken here after he had been kidnapped in Concord. Once you meet Aiden outside the gunner base at Vault 75, you make a plan to either go in hard and fast or quiet and stealthy, disguised as gunner recruits. For my playthrough, I decided to go in quiet, convincing the guard at the front, Sergeant Weiss, to not only let us pass without incident after he recognized me from back in Diamond City, but also successfully floating the idea of him working for me before he abandoned his post. From there, we travel with Aiden throughout the base as it experiences an emergency lockdown due to a high-priority prisoner, and move through the different levels in order to reach the old Overseer's office. Once we arrive, we witness one of the gunners from Diamond City, the one known as Berman, questioning Jake for information about the comm hub as Captain Algernon observes the interrogation. Displeased with his needlessly violent methods, Algernon falcon punches Berman across the room before dismissing him. This is where we and Aiden come in to save Jake, but learn that Algernon is actually displeased with the direction the current leader of the Gunners, Captain Wes, is taking the faction. As such, he has been attempting to undermine Wes from within, ensuring Jake's survival as well as trying to keep the comm hub out of Wes's hands. Unfortunately, due to Berman violating Algernon's direct orders, the comm hub now lies in Gunner control, rather than in Algernon's as he originally planned. After allowing Jake to go free, Algernon agrees to assist you with the retrieval of the comm hub from the Gunners. After returning to Concord and ejecting a few Gunners from the town, we head down into the underground plutonium well to respond to some odd power surges. While down there, we meet up with a Gunner engineer named Lupe, who is actually an old friend of Jake's who had been forcefully conscripted into their ranks following the Quincy Massacre. With a new mechanically knowledgeable ally at our side, things are already starting to look up for our upcoming fight against the gun. Oh, wait, they already got the comm hub working and they're attacking Sanctuary. Damn it. Not long after fending off the gunner attack, you receive a garbled radio communication that you can't quite make out, so you go looking for Jake for his assistance. You find him inside the church in Concord, reflecting on his past and fearing the overwhelming mountain that he has to climb with taking on the Gunners. After a bit of reassurance and a little flirting with Lupe,
I got something I need to do anyway. So, shift that pint-sized keister of yours.
Okay, if you say so. But if you keep it up with all this short stuff, I'll find a footstool so I can bop you on the nose.
Just fucking Cass!
He helps to descramble the radio signal, and we learn that Aiden has been tailing a squad of gunners and is concerned with their odd behavior, asking you to meet him in an old shack just outside of Vault 81. Upon arriving at the meeting place, though, all you find is a note from Aiden informing you that you took too long to arrive and that the gunner squad had already begun carrying out their mission of assaulting and occupying Vault 81. Inside the vault, you find several guards taking shelter near the main entrance, Deputy Overseer Cedric Mansfield being among them. He asks for your help in combating the invading gunners, which you are more than eager to accept. Once you make your way to the Overseer's office, you confront the leader of the squad assaulting the vault, one who is very afraid of you. Interrogating him reveals that he and his men were sent there to retrieve a device for the comm hub from the newly promoted Commander Berman, and after providing you with a radio to contact him, begs you to let him and his men go. After deciding the fate of the remaining gunners, you turn your attention to the radio to get a hold of Berman and question him on the location of the comm hub. After a short back and forth, Berman thanks you for helping to create so many new settlements for the gunners to take over, mentioning that they had actually just gotten back from attacking one very recently. It is then that you hear a new voice on the radio, a very familiar one at that. The voice of Old Paul, the nice old man who had been helping you with establishing settlements, can be heard, fearlessly mocking Berman and the other gunners. The tension builds, the air grows dense, and with one final insult.
Any last words? Oh, I got plenty of words, but most have too many syllables for the likes of you to understand. How about witless troglodyte, or ham-fisted reprobate? Here's one you might comprehend. Lousy shot. How's my aim now? Wasteland trash.
After the call ends, Aiden and Algernon both begin to theorize that Berman and the other gunners must be at the GNN Plaza in the southern area of the Commonwealth. A veritable fortress, the Gunner Plaza itself is staffed with dozens, if not hundreds of soldiers. Ironically, because of this, no one has tried to attack the plaza in a very long time, meaning that the troops stationed inside are ill-prepared for a direct assault. Running the plan by Jake opens up an alternative to a full-on attack. Lupe floats the idea of hacking their systems to issue an evacuation order, giving any that choose not to fight and die for the gunners a chance to run away. In order to get more information about the plaza, you take Lupe to get the schematics for the ancient building from the Ron in Diamond City, now fully recovered and looking as dashing as ever. It is at this point that you have the opportunity to ask for assistance with the assault from any of the main factions of the base game. Minutemen, the Railroad, the Brotherhood of Steel, the Institute, as well as new factions like the Commonwealth Police Department, will all lend their assistance with the upcoming battle. After a quick overview of the plan, one that involves tricking the gunners into detonating their own minefield with mini-nukes targeting mannequins around the plaza, a truly epic battle begins. Once inside, you make your way down into the basement of the plaza to continue the assault, but are surprised by an ambush and are confronted by Berman. You either shoot him through the eye, getting sweet, sweet wasteland justice for Old Paul, or you manage to talk him out of attacking you and convince him to leave the Commonwealth. From here, you make your way back up to the main studio of the plaza, where you finally meet the infamous Captain Wes, leader of the Commonwealth Gunners. Speaking with him reveals his true motivation behind taking the comm hub, as well as the increased gunner activity in the region. Okay, let's see here. Gunners in the Commonwealth. Ah, here it is. Wes wants to become governor of the Commonwealth. Alright. With information on advanced technology caches that the gunner's mysterious benefactor provides him, Wes claims that his control of the Commonwealth would usher in peace and prosperity for the region. He further explains that the lack of forward thinking, a bigger picture mentality, was the primary reason for why their attack of Quincy turned into a slaughter. From his recounting of events, the gunners only needed access to a singular house in the town. The plan was to occupy the town with overwhelming numbers, present their demands, and no one gets hurt. According to Wes, the Minutemen's lack of foresight forced the gunner's hand, and resulted in the slaughter that took place at the settlement. It is this lack of big-picture thinking, Wes claims, that has held the Commonwealth back, and that he and the Gunners are the only path forward. One short skirmish later, however, Wes and the remaining Gunners in the plaza are all swiftly disposed of. If you allowed Weiss to live back at Vault 75, he will be present in the room and spared the hail of bullets you have for Wes. After a few ominous words about Aiden, Weiss makes his exit from the Gunner occupation and on to brighter futures. A few days later, Jake asks you to meet him at the now abandoned Gunner Plaza. After informing you that the Gunners managed to improve and fix a lot of the previous issues the ComHub had, he suggests that you all move in and set up shop in the plaza. After showing off the newly improved and renamed Array, you and Jake actively start planning to expand your settlement building operations. It's not something you can do alone though, so you enlist the assistance of Aiden, Mansfield, Lupe, and your demolition expert Teresa in setting up headquarters in the Gunner Plaza. After a bunch of base building that, while super interesting, is not all that relevant story-wise, Jake pulls you aside and shows you some radio chatter that he had been picking up on the Array. Dozens, if not hundreds of different communications, all from people and groups across the Commonwealth, talking about how the sole survivor led an assault on the Gunner HQ and succeeded in capturing the once thought impregnable fortress. Normally, this would be cause for celebration. However, we aren't the only ones to have heard all this chatter. Increasing the sensitivity of the antenna, Jake picked up radio chatter from Gunners outside of the Commonwealth. A clear radio communication suddenly comes in between an unknown voice and Berman, the latter of which calling in about the status of a very large and very well-trained battalion of Gunner soldiers stopped on the road moving towards Boston. War is coming to the Commonwealth, unlike any it's seen before, and we are the first, and possibly only, line of defense.
Seems we'll all be relying on your leadership yet again. Because if there's anyone who can guide us through this, it's you.
Oh, dicks. See you in Chapter 3.
We've survived this far. We'll make it to the end.
With a lot of my old reviews, I would often do the compliment sandwich style of review. Talk about the positives, then the negatives, then my final thoughts, which are often very positive. For this review, however, I wanted to get the negatives out of the way first, because I feel they are minor compared to the mod as a whole. Sim Settlements 2 does a lot right, and their quality control is usually very high when it comes to storytelling. However, that doesn't mean that they're perfect. Several missions separate from the main story, missions that lead to the very well written and very well executed Commonwealth Police Department questline, involves you helping an ex-CPD officer in hunting down and killing several thugs scattered across Boston, in a mission to seek revenge for the murder of his wife. Much like with my Commonwealth responder criticism, several of the men you are tasked with hunting down are just kind of sitting out in the open with no one backing them up. Wherein similar targets in Commonwealth responders were placed in locations that already had raiders, these characters were not, making it tremendously easy to not only kill them, but to just walk right past them if you're not paying attention. This is without mentioning the fact that these quests saw a pattern of either 1. Talking to Caleb and being told to come back later, or 2. Talking to Caleb and being sent to kill someone, only to return and then being told to come back later. While there are only so many options when it comes to the execution of a story like this, it still felt like there was either far too much waiting or far too much traveling involved to justify the time spent actually completing the missions. Yes, doing so does give you quicker access to the Commonwealth Police Department missions. However, it's an even bigger problem because if the player gets bored with these quests, there's a lower likelihood of them completing them. meaning that it takes them longer to get to the much more well-planned Commonwealth Police Department missions. Now, to be fair, there's a point in Caleb's story that does get really interesting, and there's even the opportunity to miss this interesting part of this branched quest like I did in my playthrough. However, it's difficult to overlook just how slow and uninteresting the first missions of this questline actually are. A lack of polish, perhaps, but one that I know is incredibly rare when it comes to Kingath's content. A rare miss to start, but one worth sticking around for to the end. After defeating the gunners at their plaza, you and Jake work to re-establish the building as a true headquarters for your continued settlement building operations in the Commonwealth. I want to start off by saying that what Kingath and his team were able to do with this Metal Gear Solid 5 Mother Base idea is genius, and is perhaps one of the most impressive things that I've seen on a technical and gameplay level introduced into Fallout 4, and is right up there with a lot of the technical innovations that the Kojima version of Fallout: The Frontier was able to pull off. However, there is a wrinkle in the whole system I was able to discover while playing it for myself. A big part of Sim Settlement 2's settlement system relies on industrial plots, which are basically resource-gathering buildings that provide your settlement with different crafting materials, scrap, mechanical parts, and so forth. Unlocking these different plot types allows you to gather more and more complex and rare items for building up your growing settlement. There is only so much these settlements can hold though, each settlement only having so many resources that it can hold before collecting stops. You are able to increase that amount using different inventory expanding items and even upgrading lower grade items to higher grade ones with the correct plot. But even it has its limits, and from here, there's no real place to take them. This is where the headquarters comes into play, allowing settlements you establish trade routes with to donate their excess resources to your cause, allowing you to further expand and improve your main base of operation. Some of you may have already noticed what the problem is, but I'll speak plainly nevertheless. No settlements, no resources. During my playthrough, one of the major issues I had with trying to build up the base was the lack of resources, which was a direct result of the lack of resources that my connected settlements had to provide. To be fair, this was an issue with my specific playstyle during my streams, focusing on the story and ignoring my settlement building efforts. It was nevertheless an obstacle that I was not able to overcome though without cheating or using console commands to advance to the end of the story. This raises the question of how someone who is simply following the story is actually meant to naturally complete the main quests. Many players aren't interested in the settlement building aspect of Fallout 4, and with regards to Sim Settlements, would rather focus on the story. Yes, I see the issue with people expecting a pure story experience from a mod called Sim Settlements. At the same time though, it could have a negative effect on different playstyles. Let's say that I wanted to play through the main quest, get all the way to the HQ, and then start my settlement building adventures where I start building at settlements closest to the HQ and building outward. Let's say I built up Sanctuary to be super good, but didn't bother expanding to any other settlement. Since Sanctuary is too far away to actually establish a trade contract with them, or at least it was in my game, that would mean I would have to fully stop the quest and then branch off and build nearby settlements in order to complete the story. Again, I see the issue with ignoring the settlement system of a mod built on the back of a settlement system, but it's still difficult to ignore the player choice aspect, as well as the progression halt that happens in general if you're not equipped enough to begin expanding at the HQ right away. Much like with my criticism of Caleb and his quest lines, it's less an issue of style and quality, and more an issue of execution. Is the feature bad? Not even a little bit. Could it have been better? Yeah, probably. My point is that, while still very well made, the base feature does have some limitations. Limitations that, the way I played during my streams, were super progression halting. But if someone plays the mod and puts even a small amount of effort into settlement building, they should have no problem with the headquarters system.
You there!
Yeah?
Congratulations, you're a janitor. Grab a broom and get cleaning.
Oh, okay.
There. You see? That wasn't so hard, was it?
everything. For real though, there's so much about this new chapter that I could gush about for hours, drastically extending this video beyond any reasonable duration, so I'll talk about just a few different things that I loved most about this mod. As I talked about before, one mission in the main story sees you and Aiden infiltrating the gunner base in Vault 75 to rescue Jake from captivity. You are given two options on how to go about executing this mission. You have the option to go in guns blazing, killing your way to the heart of the gunner stronghold, or you can dress up as gunner recruits and sneak your way into the facility. Additionally, Sergeant Wise at the front entrance can be tricked into believing your disguise or can see right through you with the correct dialogue option, making it so you have to complete a speech check in order to get past him without violence. While this kind of stealth-based mission isn't new to the Fallout franchise, the way this quest plays out, giving you an actual disguise system, allows players a different choice than the normal kill all enemies style of quest that is so easy to implement when it comes to missions like this one. As such, its inclusion is a welcome change of pace. Whereas normally the location would just be a straight up gunner bloodbath, King Gath and his team took the time and the effort to reimagine the area to not only feel more alive with its gunner occupants, but to allow players a less bloody way of completing the mission. A welcome change of pace, and one that I enjoyed very much.
This should do nicely. All right, let's get going.
After you rescue Jake from the gunners, you return to Concord to find a small group of gunners harassing the local citizens. This was a surprise to say the least, as up until now, there had been no other citizens in Concord other than Jake. Or so we thought. You see, during Chapter 1, the expansion of Concord wasn't something that was ever implemented. When Chapter 2 came along though, not long after you kill the Deathclaw do other people start showing up. Slowly at first, but soon you'll meet trappers, men of faith, ex-police officers, and many other citizens that have moved into the now cleaned up town. Not only that, but as time goes on, the citizens will actually start erecting walls, gates, and turrets to help keep their new homes safe from hostile forces. They even put boards over the puddles. Walking around Concord, seeing it alive with people, lights at night, and being well fortified just does something for you. It makes the game really feel like you're helping to bring life and civilization back to the wasteland. Anyone can build a shack town in the middle of the swamp, but it takes something a bit more to help secure a location where a man can run his clothing store and a woman her newspaper. I think that's pretty damn cool. Sim Settlements 2 has always walked alongside the main plot of Fallout 4. It's one of the reasons why there's such large gaps between certain quests, to allow the player plenty of time and opportunity to play the rest of the game before being presented with the option to continue the Sim Settlements story. As such, it is not uncommon for many players to have increased their reputation with one or even multiple different core factions by the time they get to Chapter 2. The Minutemen, the Railroad, the Institute, the Brotherhood of Steel have all existed for the most part separate from Sim Settlements 2. Until Chapter 2, that is. While preparing to attack the Gunner Plaza, Jake suggests that you go out and ask any of the factions that you've helped to lend their strength to take on this dangerous and well-equipped force you find yourself up against. This allows you to go to every one of these factions and recruit them into your assault on the Gunner Fortress. The fact that this idea was added shows an ever-increasing desire for King Gath and the rest of his team to include more and more elements of the main game into the larger narrative of Sim Settlements 2, further connecting the fates of Jake and his team to that of the Commonwealth and its people. It was so cool to see all of the allies that I had gained, okay, well, not all of them, but you get the idea, in the same place, standing side by side against a common enemy, planning a method of attack and executing it with a singular, organized force of combined power. So what are my final thoughts? All in all, Sim Settlements 2 Chapter 2 doesn't quite feel as timeless as Chapter 1 did. Maybe it's because I've only played through it once before, maybe it's because even as I'm writing this out, I'm still processing everything in my head. Or maybe it's some other third thing that's difficult to put into words. What I do know is that in almost every conceivable way, Chapter 2 improved and innovated upon the original foundation that Sim Settlements 1 built, and Chapter 1 added upon. The story was longer, with many new main characters introduced. I really enjoyed seeing Jake question himself, showing real human emotion when faced with something as daunting as taking on the Gunners. It felt real. I was genuinely concerned to see Ron's bloody and broken body upon finding him back at his office. Any story that can make you feel such strong emotions, to give you a reason to want to push forward to the next mission or the next chapter, is doing exactly what any good story ought to do. And this is all without even talking about the Commonwealth Police Department, or the Nightingales, or any of the wonderful standalone missions you can get from people who just show up at your settlement. A feature that was further expanded on from Chapter 1, I'll point out. I'll be real with you guys, I could easily recommend Chapter 1 to anyone, even the people who didn't care for the settlement building system in the vanilla game. The story was compelling, and it didn't require too much attention on the settlement system in order to get through it. It's a harder sell with Chapter 2, as settlement building has a much bigger role when it comes to completing the main quest, but seeing as how Chapter 3 is most likely going to involve some kind of real-time strategy warfare across the entire Commonwealth, you guys might just have to learn to at least tolerate it, because Chapter 3 might just be the single greatest quest mod to ever hit the Fallout 4 Nexus. Thank you for watching my review of Sim Settlements 2 Chapter 2. What did you think of Chapter 2 of this outstanding mod? Tell me your thoughts in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this review, check out one of the other videos I've done on screen now, and remember to tune in to twitch.tv/followertoshi to be a part of the live viewing experience. Until next time, I thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all out there in the wasteland.